Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cryptoconomy podcast. Today, I am very excited for our guest, Angela McArdle, who has been the previously the chairwoman of the Libertarian Party, and she has been instrumental in getting the Trump administration to pardon Ross Ulbricht. And amongst other things, she has been a really pure supporter of crypto and has a deep understanding of the industry, but also how it intersects with politics and how to actually get change enacted at the highest levels of government while providing a path for people who believe in the libertarian ideals. So, thank you so much for coming on the show, Angela.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I've been following Angela for years now. I was incredibly excited when she took over the Libertarian Party. I felt like she was the change that the party needed, and the entire time, all the decisions she made were really the things I was hoping could come together. And she did a really great job of building a coalition, creating paths for people in crypto to enter the party and start to have political impact, all the way up to the presidential level, where she was able to actually get some libertarian party, I guess, proposals enacted, and I hadn't seen that really effectively done before. So I'd love to just pick her brain a little bit about what it was like to run an organization like that and the importance of the party going forward, because I think the Libertarian Party is interesting in that it's not super big, definitely compared to the other parties, but it has a really outsized impact because I think
Yes.
it's one of the most philosophically pure, probably the only one that is pure at all. There's actually some ideal behind it that's consistently enacted, and I think because of that, there are a lot of others who follow their lead, and they have a pretty outsized impact on the culture. And so I guess to start, I was hoping you could maybe just share a little bit about how you came into the party and what you saw that you wanted to change, or how you felt that we could have a bigger impact, and what you did to get us there.
Yeah, I was pretty politically active before I got involved in the party, just in the greater Los Angeles area. And I was just attending like libertarian party socials because essentially like that's what it is. Historically is it's been a social club. And so I think I went to a couple in like 2014 and then started attending again in 2016, and someone asked me to run for Congress in a special election. And I said, no. And then they just pushed and pushed and pushed. And so finally I gave in, right? How to turn a no into a yes. Be persistent, guys. And so I said yes. And, obviously I didn't get elected, but it was such a media circus because it was a special election in 2017. So it was the only thing happening in the country at that time to fill Javier Becerra's spot. He was a congressional representative who got pulled to be the attorney general in California, I think. So I was running there, and there were like 20 something candidates running, and there was a ton of media attention. I had an interview with the LA Times and like other corporate media, and they're like, "What do you care about?" And I'm like, "Oh, I think taxation is theft," and they're like, "Oh, that's enough microphone for you." But it was really fun, right? I was like, "Oh, this is kind of interesting." So I just got more involved in the party after that. I started chairing the Los Angeles County Party. I was a secretary briefly of the California State Party for like a year, and then shot up to national.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's super inspirational to know you can just get in on the ground floor and put in the work, and the right people will recognize that. And I think, especially in the Libertarian Party, there's a very like meritocratic ideal that they see you put in the work and they want to
Yes,
support it.
yes,
But I know there are, definitely I feel like kind of like crypto, you are wrangling a very decentralized community of people with a lot of
that's
different
a
ideas about
generous way to
how
put
to.
it. Yes, yes.
So what was that experience like? How are you able to get people to come together and at least focus on a few things that everyone might be able to agree upon? And how do you think, you were successful in creating a platform that people could get behind? And why do you think previous chairs really weren't able to do that?
Well, what I did was I focused on issue coalitions and like quantifiable wins. So, one of the first things I did was I was like, we're going to hold a huge anti-war protest against U.S. involvement in the war in Ukraine, and we're going to work with everybody on it. And this was before it was like more popular to do this, even in right-wing circles. It was called Rage Against the War Machine. We held it in D.C. at the Lincoln Memorial. We had Ron Paul there, Tulsi Gabbard, Dennis Kucinich, Jimmy Dore. Like, we had people on the far left, economically at least. We had people on the right. We had people from just all over the map. And after that happened, you started to see public policy shift. Like, we got media coverage. People started to become more emboldened. Like, it was a big win. And I thought, like, well, let's just keep advancing libertarianism by any avenue possible. And that's not something the party has done. I don't think they've ever had any event outside of a convention where they had 3,000 people show up. Because we had about 3,000 people in February, in DC outside, and it was wildly successful. So I just thought, like, well, let's keep going. Some other interesting things I did is, we had like this publicity stunt where I announced we were going to file conservatorship over Joe Biden. It's like, fun stuff. People are like, oh my gosh, you can't do that. And I was like, actually, according to DC law, a corporation can file for conservatorship. So it's just really like fun. I try to make things fun and like viral and interesting. And I feel like the tired old mantra of the two parties are always the same. Like, it's just not super compelling. Maybe it's true, but it's not exciting. Like, give people a third choice. Well, yeah, but what if that third choice also sucks? Like, what does that really say? It doesn't, it's ideologically meaningless. Like, a third choice. Oh, okay. I mean, we could say the same thing about a fifth choice. Like, so I just want to stack wins where I can. And I was willing to work with anybody, including Donald Trump. And that definitely made some heads explode.
And I think that's the exact right thinking. I run startups, and it's very hard to compete with companies that have 100 times your resources and 100 times more people. But you can be edgier, you can be more fun, you can take risks that they can't afford to, and you can start to build out that coalition with other like-minded people, other smaller organizations. And when you do come together and you are, willing to work in lockstep, you can accomplish a lot, and you can often be a lot more agile and a lot quicker than even the larger incumbents, which I think is what you did a great job of. And I think the other thing you did a great job of is attracting new media. I mean, I think everyone remembers the interview with man, I can't even remember his name, guy from New Mexico, where they just railed him on Syria policy.
Oh, Gary Johnson. Yeah.
Yeah, Gary Johnson. Yeah, just unmemorable. I remember just, man, why did we get that guy up there? I mean, for the most part, he was actually pretty good until that moment, but he just had a few things I didn't love. But overall, I think it was pretty widely recognized. They're not going to treat you fairly. They're going to try to go for the kill wherever they are.
Yeah.
But I think you recognized very adeptly that new media, getting people on these podcasts, having people like Dave Smith and others support who do have very large platforms and are like philosophically aligned, allows you to just create a lot more touch points with the everyday person where you get a fair shake in the media. So I guess, what was your experience with that, and sort of how did you bring that coalition together? Or was the coalition just kind of like ready and waiting, and you just kind of had to open the door for them?
I mean, I think that we owe a lot to Dave Smith and Tom Woods for sort of like breaking that open and making people interested in what we were doing, but beyond that, I really try to cultivate relationships with like Tim Pool and Timcast, and like be gracious when we get media attention and opportunities. I hired a comms director who had the same the same passion and vision, and when he moved on to another project, I replaced him with someone who had also like a similar passion and vision. Like, I just stopped trying, and this is something I think that the party has really struggled with in the past. I stopped trying to chase the attention of people who hate us.
Yeah.
You are not going to convince corporate media to respect you. They don't. They have contempt for you. But alt media, dissident right-wingers, anti-war lefties, anti-COVID, COVID mania dissidents. Like, those people are going to be interested in what we have to say. So work with them. Work with Bitcoiners who are essentially libertarians, but they're just not active in the party. Like, these are people who are economically literate and want individual freedom. Like, try reaching out to them instead of like MSNBC.
Yep, I think that's exactly right, and I think it is very interesting having I've been a Bitcoiner since 2013 and just meeting so many philosophically aligned people. You go to those conferences, they were all libertarians, but very few were involved with the party. Very few felt that they could have any impact on politics, and there was just this I don't know. I guess they felt disenfranchised, and
Yeah.
that like no matter what they did, it wouldn't matter. And I think just giving them a chance to see that they can, I think is huge. And I think one of the one of the biggest things you've done recently, at least, is what you did with Ross. And I'd love maybe for you to just tell that story kind of in your own words, how it came together. I was at the Bitcoin conference and I saw Ross going up on stage and I was like, that's Angela. Like,
That
all
was
these people don't
crazy.
know, they don't know, but like I knew the story and I was like, wow, it's so cool seeing this from the earliest days where Dave Smith was just starting to talk about it and you were just starting to get it together and see it come full circle. And that was a real moment of inspiration to me. Like, this can be done. You can have real change, you can make real impact if you just have a target and get everyone to rally behind it. But I'd love to hear just a little bit of that from
Yeah.
where you stood.
Yeah. I mean, it was like November of 2023, and I was just at home, asleep actually. And I get this very early morning text message from Rick Grinnell, former acting director of national intelligence under Trump's first term, and former ambassador to Germany. And he's like, "Hey, I got your number from mutual friends." Okay. Who are those? Who
Yeah,
are
are
those
they my
people?
friends? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of trippy, and he's like, I'm a friend of President Trump, and I know you're the chair of the National Libertarian Party. I'd love to talk with you about what libertarians think about President Trump, because he's running again. So I just like compose myself, have some coffee, before I call him
Yeah.
back. And I did this thing that libertarians aren't very good at, which is that I was diplomatic in my response. I said, well, we love that he didn't start any new wars. We weren't like super crazy about that whole drone strikes on Soleimani thing. We're kind of sensitive about, foreign interventionism. But, also we're really sympathetic to the lawfare that he's experienced. Like we want him to win. We hope he wins that because we recognize how gross and wrong it is. And it's a very scary precedent. And I think Rick really liked that. And I think that was probably like a very important thing for me to say. And so, we continued the conversation. Rick met with us in person, my husband and I, and we were having dinner, just talking about all kinds of stuff like drug war, free speech, lawfare, like everything, right? Economics. And he's like, "Oh, President Trump's going to call you like any minute now." I was like, "What?" And so he does, like Rick just passes me the phone. He called Rick and I spoke with him for like 45 minutes. And he was super sweet and friendly, and he'd read all about me. I was being complimentary. I'm like, oh, like I wish you were still on Twitter. I love all the things that that happened when you're on Twitter, making people's heads explode. And he's like, yeah, I've read your Twitter too. You made a lot of heads explode. Like it was really funny. He'd done his research, right? And he's like, I got to get the vote. That Joe Jorgensen, she cost me the vote in 2020. I got to get the vote. And I'm like, well, I can't I'm the chair of a different political party. I can't just make it happen that you can get our votes, but I love that you want to get our votes and that you want to be libertarian. So I can show you how to get the small L vote. And he was very interested in that. He's like, let's keep talking. So I went down to Mar-a-Lago a couple of weeks later. And before I did, I'm talking to Rick like, how's this going to go? What's kind of expected of me, since I've already said I can't explicitly do this or do that. And he's like, well, President Trump is a deal maker. So whatever the libertarians want, whatever it takes, you make the biggest ask because he needs to win this election. So you make a big ask, and if you guys negotiate it down, like, that's fine, but you won't know if you don't ask. And I'm thinking, like, well, what is, there's a
That's
million things
hard.
I want to ask.
Yeah,
There's a
that's
million things.
impossible.
I want to end the Fed, but it's like he can't end the Fed. That's not up to him. It's up to Congress. And Congress isn't going to do anything because it's like 435 people and 90% of them are psychopaths. So, what can we do? So I was like, he's got to free Ross Ulbricht because he can do it on his own. He doesn't need anybody else's help. He doesn't need their permission. He doesn't need them to work with him on it. He can do it. Everyone can disagree and he can do it. And it's so easy. It's just like one form, a letter, a tweet, maybe, I don't even know if it has to be in writing. And all of our guys that's going to rally our base more than anything. So incredible. It'll change Ross's life. And it's wrapped in emotional appeal. Our guys will show up. They will vote for Donald Trump if he does that. And so I told him, we're sitting down at dinner and I'm like, and we've already spoken like a lot. And it's like, now it's time to get down to brass tacks. Like, what do I need to do? And he wanted to come to our convention, which is like, I'm like, oh, geez, I'm like, yeah, this is going to be political suicide for me. And I did get like sued and stuff over it. But I was like, yeah, I think if you come down to our convention and you walk out on stage and you say that you're going to free Ross Ulbricht, everyone will scream. They will all vote for you. They will just lose their minds. And all of the Bitcoiners, they'll vote for you too. And they'll give you their money. So libertarians don't, they don't really do that. But the Bitcoiners will give you their money. And they don't even vote most of the time. And he went, who's that? Who's Ross Ulbricht? I'll do it. I'll free him. He said, I love freeing people. I'll walk out on stage and I'll say, free Ross Ulbricht, mic drop. And I just was like, I spent, to be fair, like, it was a lot of work to get elected chair. I just toured the country for like a year and a half, doing all these like speaking tours. A lot of people put a lot of money into the Mises Caucus takeover. But then I get there in this moment and I have this incredible ask and it was so easy. He was just like, yeah, absolutely. Who is this? And I was like, I tried to jog his memory a little bit and Rick did. He was like, this was a pardon that was on your desk and you were going to do it and it didn't happen at the end. And then he was like, oh, I think I do remember him. That attorney general, there were a bunch of pardons that were supposed to happen that didn't. He was a horrible, horrible man. It was very interesting that the attorney general had basically slow walked a bunch of documentation so that it didn't actually happen on Trump's last day in office. Terrible.
Wow.
Terrible. So yeah, that's how it went down, man. And I continued to stay in close contact with his campaign over the course of a year. And I did extend the invitation to Joe Biden as well to come speak at our convention. He or Kamala could have pardoned Ross Ulbricht and just totally stolen Trump's thunder, and they just don't want to do it. They are happy to let murderers and rapists and people who steal, just like violent criminals just run rampant in the country. But heaven forbid we let out a computer program.
No, that's wow. That's an incredible story. That really is. And I think it was such a masterstroke because it was the perfect ask. It was something that was so doable, so reasonable, something that was so widely supported within the party. And you also created a bigger tent where you got all these Bitcoiners at the conference who are now all of a sudden aware and interested and want to be a part of something like that, where they can go, support these people and actually have some impact to kind of push back against what they see as government overreach. And I can see that even now. Yesterday, I was watching the press conference and he got asked a question about freeing someone else who is also being persecuted for something similar. And that was never a topic of national conversation that would have come up at a press conference previously. And I think now it's that important. And I think it's coming at the same time, like you said, where Bitcoiners are becoming a huge donor base. They
Yes.
have, I mean, everyone else is broke because of inflation and
Yeah.
all the Fed policy, so they're the only ones with any money left. But that means that they're a really powerful constituency, but they're also very ideological and honestly, like they do a good job of understanding the core issues, understanding the economic issues, why they're happening, and creating pretty elegant proposals as to how to solve them. So I think the fact that now they're actually being listened to is hugely important, and
Absolutely.
I think the future of the U.S. in a lot of ways I think will also be hugely impacted by the ability of people here to create crypto infrastructure and not have that be done overseas. I mean, I've been in the industry for 10 years now, and I mean, I had a team. We built the first decentralized exchange ever. We were a year before Uniswap. We were early, and I went to every single lawyer and VC, and they told me you're gonna end up like Ross if you launch this thing, and we don't know, we can't help you. Maybe if you raise $20 million and get licensed in every state and get a $20 million legal team, maybe. But it's like how you're not going to have innovation, and I've seen all
Correct.
of the other people just scared off. They're either in Dubai now, or they're in Singapore, or they move to a different industry and they're no
Yep.
longer interested.
It's not good. It's not good for the country to run off innovators. It's not a good plan.
No, and it's been such a shame to see so much of it offshore, but I think we have a real opportunity to bring it back now. Hopefully, I think there is like, but it seems to be going back and forth. I think a lot of people were expecting it to happen a little faster than it has, and there are still
Yes.
some some uncertainty as to if these new task force will start going after companies without really cause and certain people. I think that was the hardest part. Was it all became
Mm-hmm.
power games. The Coinbases
Mm-hmm.
of the world with the right connections, they're never getting prosecuted, but the indie developers are always getting the book thrown at them, and so there is still this unbalanced regulation that
Yep.
is further entrenching incumbents. And I think that's probably what I worry about most now is the incumbents do have a lot of power and they've got a lot of money, and now they have an
Mm-hmm.
incentive to start to pull the ladder up behind them. And so I'm hoping that doesn't happen, but
Well, that's why you got to organize into a voting block. You got to organize into a voting block. You got to have it's very carrot or stick, right? And I tell people like don't be all stick because nobody wants that. Like you have to have something to offer. And what you have to offer is the ability to throw elections. You make or break someone. You just have to be willing, if we get these pardons, God willing, then you got to suck it up and vote for some GOP candidates in swing states in the midterms because that's what they need, so it's doable. It's doable, but Bitcoiners have to become, I know they hate this and I understand, they have to become a little bit more politically active. You have to defend yourself essentially.
100%. And I think, yeah, they just need these organizations that create a big enough tent where they feel welcome and they can start to organize.
They can
I mean,
they can organize as libertarians and they don't have to do very much. Like I'm not talking about getting active in the party and attending meetings and arguing about bylaws. You pop up twice a year at conventions. And if things go your way, if the administration is protecting you and making sure that people don't go to prison, then you don't run candidates against their guys. But if things start veering off the rails, you got to make a stink, and one of the ways that you can do that is by throwing an election. So run your candidate, say, we're really mad about XYZ policy, that's why we're running. And then if that policy gets changed, if people get pardoned, whatever it is, pull your candidate off the ballot. But that's like the biggest stick you can shake. And making way for them in elections, that's like the biggest carrot you can give to, getting them elected. So it only takes like half a percentage, by the way. It only takes half a percentage to change the course of an election. So we're not talking about millions of people across the country. We're talking about like 1 million people, and sometimes when it's just one particular state, we're talking about a few thousand votes. Like you have a lot of political power within your reach.
Yeah, 100%. I think people don't realize that, and they're kind of meant to get discouraged and not even try, but it only takes a small coalition to
Mm-hmm.
really get out there and really try and push. And there are plenty of Bitcoiners and crypto people, many who I saw actually flip sides in the past election purely because of that. A lot of these guys who had been large donors of the Democratic Party finally kind of like got the courage to switch over and say, look, this is my whole job, this is my industry. It would be
Yes.
wrong for me to vote against this. I can't do it.
Yes.
And so it's becoming a very powerful, important voting block. And there's a lot of money on the line, which I think is why all the parties seem to be cozying up to it a little bit now. It's a little cooler than it once was, but I think you guys really paved the way for that to be the case. Um, I guess I'd love to hear your thoughts on stuff that Trump has proposed, things like the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Do you think governments getting more involved is a good thing? Do you think it was inevitable regardless? Do you think that's actually I interned at the White House and I remember thinking back then like, man, I think the only way we can get out ahead of this like inflationary debt spiral is if we back the dollar with Bitcoin, have some crazy inflation, pay off the debt with our crypto, and then go back to a balanced budget. And it seems
I
like that
mean,
might be what they're trying to do.
we could, yeah, well, I know that's what Cynthia Lummis wants to do. I mean, I don't think it's going to like really hurt. And there are plenty of people who disagree with me on that. What I don't like is the idea of our guys being innovators, getting their Bitcoin confiscated and it going into the strategic reserve. That's not a good policy. So if we're going to have this, we need to have safeguards and protections for innovators in the crypto space. I think that's really important. You know, beyond that, of Bitcoin mostly means that Bitcoin is safe. Okay, so another weird thing that, you could potentially see happening is them trying to like confiscate everyone's Bitcoin, kind of like how they did with gold. They're like, turn it all in, throwing it into the reserve. That would be bad. There's a lot of bad things that could happen, but I just think the way Bitcoin is designed, it's so safe. Like it's really hard to implement any of those things. If we are able to pay down a massive amount of the national debt, that would be great. I don't trust Congress at all, to do what they're supposed to do. But beyond that, I think it's a good thing. Oops, I have a toddler who just walked in.
No
oh, hi,
worries.
you're giving me a dinosaur.
No.
Here you go. Okay, go with Dada, please. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. That's what it's all about at the end of the day.
I got a green dino.
She's got a good taste. That's a good dinosaur.
Green dino.
Oh, Stegosaurus. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. I guess here's one thing I worry about actually is, I mean, a lot of people are like, did the NSA create Bitcoin? Is this just, a way to actually, because in a lot of ways, a lot of misconceptions are like, this is super private, but not really. It's actually public. Everyone
Right.
can see.
Public
And
ledger.
as AI gets really advanced, it's super good at deconstructing and figuring out like who is who and demystifying what's happening. Even, I mean, 10 years ago, I knew a guy who was in trouble with the government and he built them a tool that could reverse engineer all this stuff for like the IRS, and he had it in his back pocket as like a get out of jail free card just in case. That this stuff does exist in a lot of ways. It is somewhat antithetical to freedom, and I think there's been a big push towards like privacy chains and allowing people, and even Tornado Cash. That's basically what Tornado Cash is, and why
Bitcoin fog,
why
all
Romans
of that.
exactly.
I mean, so one thing that I would say, because I've definitely heard, the arguments, and I respect the concern that it's like a CIA thing and that Epstein was trying to get on it. By the way, anything like this, when it pops off, feds are going to be all over it. Of course they want to get in on it, and agent provocateurs and, all kinds of people with bad motives. But if it was all just totally government controlled, I don't know that they would be going after all of these guys and trying to lock them up. I think, if anything, they would be reaching out to them to make them controlled opposition, not just throwing them in prison and making examples of them. So it just doesn't fully add up to me. I understand the concerns, but I just don't see it.
Ross, maybe I could see it. He if he was taking over the drug running industry and cutting
Right.
out the middleman who knows who the middleman was.
Right. I mean, but wouldn't they be incentivized to force those people to work with them, right? And to just take control of everything. And that's obviously not what's happened.
100%, 100%. But some of me is like, well, Bitcoiners just really stubborn. They're like, I don't know if we can reason with these people.
Yeah.
They're not the ideal people to
And
co-opt in a lot of
what's
ways.
the alternative? Fiat dollar? Or are you just going to keep spinning up cryptocurrencies forever and ever and ever? And like I'm not like a hater of all crypto, but I'm not persuaded, that it's as good as Bitcoin. I'm just not persuaded.
I think that's totally reasonable, and most of it hasn't been. It's become less decentralized. No one is taking the best parts of it. They're moving from like truly decentralized proof of work systems, which have distributed hardware, which is very hard to game,
Mm-hmm.
to more centralized proof of stake stuff, which like agentic swarms can actually very easily game proof of stake by like flash buying all this stuff or hacking enough wallets to just take over networks. And it's actually become worse over time in a lot of ways, which is somewhat concerning. But I think a lot of that was driven by regulation, where people were trying to stay on the right side of regulation.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that if we can walk that back a little bit, we can get back to solving the last few real problems or the last few upgrades that Bitcoin might need to
Yep.
really make it,
Yeah. And
stand the test of time.
I'm open-minded, right? Like I'll hear almost anyone's pitch, but so far I'm not persuaded by anything truly except Bitcoin.
Yep, I agree with that. I would say I will say I almost built a company using Monero. We
Yeah.
had like a personal data monetization company, and we wanted to help people like sell their data if they wanted to. And then right as we were doing that, like 3 or 4 countries like blanket banned Monero. Nothing else. There's like just
So
Monero.
frustrating.
Yeah,
I would
and
say
then and since
that's the runner-up for me, is the privacy coin.
Yep. But then you see Zcash getting pushed very aggressively, and you see some of the people behind Zcash, and you're like, who are these guys, these researchers at these elite universities building out this stuff, and suddenly it's getting pushed super hard, and it's interesting to see the layers to this stuff and try
Possibly
to
sus. I could stay open-minded.
yeah. Yep.
I'm not judging yet, but I'm just like, well, I'm not quite there yet.
Yep. No, when I meet a drug dealer who accepts Zcash, I'll believe it. But
That's funny.
they're
That's
all
funny. Yeah.
that's usually the tell. And yeah, even on the darknet markets and stuff, they would never accept it. They would use Monero or Bitcoin. That was it. And you're like, okay,
Yeah.
well, these guys might know. But I think it's really interesting to see how the industry is going to evolve from here on out. I'm really hoping that especially the culture of crypto. I think there's a lot of talk lately just about like how degraded the culture of Silicon Valley has become and how much it's pushed out real talent and not really abided by meritocracy, and a lot of people have been sidelined. And it's one of the reasons I've stuck to crypto is because you really can just be anyone and just be passionate and good at what you do,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll find those communities. Most people, they don't even know what you look like. You're just some cartoon anime character. They don't care what you look like. They just care, are you good at what you do? Are you passionate? And are you building cool stuff? And so I think it's a real opportunity to change the culture in tech in the US, and bring a lot of this stuff with us, hopefully. But I think it'll be interesting to see if the incumbents like Coinbase and others kind of get to push their culture down instead of the smaller
Yeah,
grassroots
I
guys
mean,
getting to push it up.
we'll see. I don't know. I mean, sometimes they can just they can read the room too, and I think in spite of people being frustrated with how slow they perceive the Trump administration to be moving in certain areas, I think the overall zeitgeist for liberty is still very strong. And people are just like, we're still in sort of this whole like rebuking of like woke, DEI, central planning, all of that. That's still very much a thing. People are just like, no, your power is gone, like you have no power here. Like that's still a thing right now.
100%. And these things are so entrenched, it takes a long time to unwind them. And if you are going to do it without destroying the entire system and causing chaos that makes things much worse, you have to be very surgical and careful, and it has to play out over a longer time horizon than a lot of people might hope for, which I think is what we're seeing now. But, doesn't change the fact that it is painful to endure for a lot of people, and it's tough, but I think it's a good time to be starting at least to get an understanding of it and starting to diversify assets a little bit. Um, I would love to hear though, I guess just what are your general thoughts on how Trump has been doing? Do you think the Libertarian Party will continue to support him into the next election? Will they really try to run another candidate and try to um, you know, push hard there? Will they try to get some other concession next time? Or will they go, maybe more to the congressional and local levels to try to push candidates?
I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, I'm pushing for Bitcoiners to join the party and go to the state and national conventions so that we can have a majority. Um, and I think that's going to be very possible in 2028. What I want to do is the kingmaker strategy. I want to take the party basically with Bitcoiners and Maha and have that be sort of Mises Caucus 2.0. Put a Bitcoiner and a Maha person up as POTUS and VPOTUS candidate. Run with the express intention of dropping out if you get major concessions. I was able to get Ross just being the chairman of the party. We had a candidate who did not cooperate, but thankfully we had a super woke candidate who was like not right wing at all, just covered in rainbow flags. So it was like, when I told the Trump administration who got the nomination, they were just like, yes, yes. They were so happy. I was like, I'm so glad, because no one else is. But that's what we need to be doing. Drop out, stay on the ballot in like 3 or 4 states, whatever, if you need it for ballot access. But by the way, most states don't need the presidential candidate for ballot access. That's a myth. We don't actually need that. It's like, tied to a statewide race, governor, I think Minnesota, it's Senate, like it's different all over the place. Do that. We have HHS. I worked closely with Kennedy in his campaign too. And we entered into what's called a joint fundraising agreement with him, where even though he wasn't technically our candidate, we allowed him to associate with us so that he could open up the amount of donations he could get, because independent candidates can only max out at like $3,000 a donation. If you have the backing of a political party and a bunch of state parties, you can get like $100,000. So I did that, and so, we really consider him as HHS secretary as a real notch in our belt, because he was able to come to the negotiating table with a lot more since his campaign jumped up when he entered into that agreement with us. So let's hold on to HHS. Let's take Treasury too, although no shade at Scott Bessent, but whoever follows him, let's make it a Bitcoiner. I don't care about Congress. I have no faith in them. There's totally a handful of sweet, wonderful people in Congress. Absolutely. A handful. That's about it.
Yeah.
That's about it. And they don't do anything. They can't. I mean, well, to be fair, Thomas Massie did kind of flip things on its head recently, but it's very rare that the good people in Congress are able to get anything done. Cabinet secretaries is where the real work gets done. I know people were flipping out over Doge and it dissolving, even though that was planned, but Office of Management and Budget is the one that zeroed out USAID. Those guys are real warriors. Tulsi in National Intelligence, who's uncovering all the crazy subversive stuff that happened during the Biden administration that was basically just going to turn us into a banana republic. I know that there haven't been as many arrests as people want to see and indictments and all that. I get it. But the fact that she's even willing to look under the rug is a huge step in the right direction. And she was a guest at one of my events. This is why coalition building is important. That's what the party needs to continue doing if it wants to actually advance liberty and not just be a weird model UN club for autists. If you want to do real work with people outside of the party, advance your agenda, and focus on cabinet positions and the transition team. Don't care about congressional elections.
Model UN for autism is hilarious. I did youth and government in high school,
Yeah.
and that is
Yeah.
how it felt sometimes.
Yep.
And even that was crazy. That was like my first real purview into how government works, because it really was. It was
It's
all a
really bad.
popularity
It's
contest.
really bad.
Yeah,
It's really bad.
and that was probably the first time I saw all the woke stuff really in action. It was almost like a testing ground for that stuff in California,
Mm-hmm.
because I grew up in California and LA too, and you could see all of a sudden all the candidates had to be, had to have, lesbian moms or something like that, and all of a sudden they immediately won, and you couldn't ever fight that because you would never win the points, and that was, back in 2011, so that was like before it was really
Very
popular.
proto woke, the very beginnings.
It really, yeah, felt like the testing ground where they're like, all right, how are the kids gonna take this? Let's see. But yeah, I think you're exactly right about exactly how that is gonna play out. Um, I was curious how you feel about just like other technology and regulations that they're talking about with like AI in particular. I think AI is very different than crypto in the sense it's very
Yeah.
centralized. You have these incumbents that are getting massive and might have a lead that is hard to catch up with. And if you feel that some of the regulations that Trump has been proposing around not allowing states to regulate, but proposing potentially national level regulations, what is kind of like the LP position on that? And it's something I've been trying to figure out how we guide in the right direction as well.
I mean, I want as few regulations as possible. It's really difficult to fully understand what's going to happen when AI hits its peak and quantum computing comes out at the same time. That's the thing that I think like the average like layperson doesn't understand is like the significant implications of quantum computing. Um, I don't know. I don't know what our world is going to look like. Like maybe I'm being overly dramatic or something, but it could be kind of crazy. Um, and so I think
I mean, I think
it's good to have competition.
100%. No, yeah, I totally agree with you there. And I think actually crypto and AI are sort of meant to merge. You need these distributed systems to be built with AI together. So that's a lot of what I'm trying to build is how do we bring the philosophy of crypto into AI and make sure that it doesn't get centralized. Um, but I guess in lieu of that, I think you're totally right about quantum and how all these things are going to come together. But one thing I've noticed is a lot of libertarians have trouble imagining what that world will look like because there is so much, emphasis on work and what we do. Like, what is the future of work in that world, and how do you have a libertarian society
Yeah.
when the AI does all the work, and then you have to distribute all this money through UBI or something, and governments own the AI? Like, how do we create the ideal libertarian world when all this technology comes together so it doesn't become the worst dystopian version of it, which it
I
totally
mean,
can. Like, there really are just two paths.
like if everybody kind of has their own AI version of themselves and you have AI workers, that might be a way that it doesn't actually just all become immediately centralized because there have to be consumers. And if the only consumers are like the top 1%, like that doesn't really work. So, I don't know, maybe what's it called? Gay luxury communism, space communism. I'm messing up the meme. Luxury gay space communism. Maybe we'll reach peak, what's it called? When the term, all of a sudden I can't think of it.
Sit too. I know what you're
You know
talking
what I
about though.
mean? Where
Yep.
we've reached everything. It's just like plentiful.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe
I
we'll be
I
like
think you're
Star
right.
Trek, but I don't
That's
think
the
so.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think we will. And I think actually the biggest concern is the surveillance state. I don't think that the workforce is going to be the first thing that freaks everybody out. I think you're going to see more robo taxis and more robots doing service delivery jobs. But generally, when that happens, the market adapts and then new jobs pop up. Like, I don't know, dude, maybe in 10 years, it's going to be totally normal for everybody who has a dog to go get it eyelash extensions. And, like, of course, you're taking your dog to get eyelash extensions. Who wouldn't? And you have the money to do it because whatever. It's just weird stuff like that. But yeah, I'm more concerned about the surveillance state and our sort of like technological arms race with China. And I'm not someone who's like, I hate China, I hate China. I think about like AI companies need to be able to compete, because where do I want my data going ultimately? I'd rather it stay in the United States than go to a foreign country that is, to some degree, and we could disagree about what degree it is, but at least to some degree fairly hostile to us and still communist.
100%. It's all about the data, and that's really been my bread and butter. We had the
Mm-hmm.
largest personal data monetization app I think ever made. And but I mean, it's not just that, it's what you do with the data. And companies like Facebook have just weaponized it, and politically too, just shamelessly weaponized it against people. And so having good proprietors of that data, or autonomous systems where the mission is, let's make your life better with this data, let's not just try
Yep.
to sell you stuff you don't need and make you
Yep.
depressed so you buy more stuff. And it really can't, it's only going to get more powerful and more manipulative, and we've already seen that. And it's scary to see where that might go. But yeah, I think combining that with the ethos of crypto is a good place to start. So I'm hoping that's where we'll get. But I think you're right. I think Star Trek future. I think that's kind of where we'll end up. Honestly, is there will always have a desire to have a hierarchy, just because the hierarchy isn't paid in money, because you have all of your goods, created in a little,
Mm-hmm.
device that just spits out your food. That you're
And
still going to care about a hierarchy.
in the last like 20, 25 years, science fiction has become increasingly more and more dystopian. Like, there's always been dystopian sci-fi, but there also used to be stuff that was more optimistic, right? And portrayed the future as like beautiful and this thing that human beings like created against all odds, and it was magnificent. That kind of like disappeared culturally. And so I feel like when we are confronted with new technology, our immediate reaction culturally is to be afraid. And like, that's not always the case. Sometimes things are beautiful and they make our lives better. So it's okay to have a little cautious optimism.
I think you have to. I think you'll never be able to enter a future you can't first believe will is possible to
Yes.
exist. You need to
Yes.
have some vision of it, and we've gotten really bad at creating that vision, especially for young people. The young people I've been trying to hire lately have just they can't even envision a positive future anymore, because
So
they've just been
sad.
so beaten down.
Yeah.
And there's been no, yeah, and I think we used to have that vision. Walt Disney was out there creating his futuristic cities and trying to show people the future of what you can do and how this can come together. And now we just have Black Mirror showing us all the worst
Right.
possible
I'm like,
adaptations.
turn off Black Mirror, turn off 28 Days Later. Like, not everything's going to kill you. Just like try to like live your life and look for some optimism and opportunities. Make opportunities if they don't exist. Go make them.
And that is the one thing, people have become, very entrepreneurial. People are
Yes.
more and more just figuring it out. These, AI tools are making it possible to compete with companies 100 times your size with way fewer people. You don't need to go beg a VC for money to go build that thing you've always wanted to build. And there is an incredible amount of opportunity for people who believe it exists and want to give it a shot. And so I think it's important to inspire young people and let them know that that's still possible. And I think it's the same for crypto. I think a lot of young people have seen the pump.fun era of just, oh, let's just go rug everyone we come and everyone we meet. Screw all these guys, they aren't real people. And it just created this terrible culture that is really depressing to be around.
Yeah.
It's become a lot less of the hopeful, let's end the Fed and create an alternative that forces them to be better through this technology that we've created, that's just intelligently designed and perfectly incentivized to make everyone win. So I think there needs to be uh, more of a belief that you can create systems where everyone wins.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's a lot of people I think have been pushing the uh, the idea that there's always a loser, that it's a zero
Yeah,
sum
it
game,
doesn't.
and I don't think that's the case.
I totally reject zero sum game mentality. It's just not. Even in politics, people are like, "Oh, it's just win or lose." I'm like, "No, no, it's not. No, it's not. Make a coalition, find common goals. Like, maybe they win the office and you win every single thing you want. Like, there are so many ways to move through life and make things like that happen."
100%. You might lose, but you win the cultural battle with the 10% of people who then go and make themselves the 20% because they're so influential and charismatic, and you build it in pieces, and all you can do is take a step and try to make things better, one step at a time.
Yep.
But I think that's what you've done. You're really a testament to that. You've done just such an incredible job. I think I think you've inspired a lot of people like me to just go and take that step and try and see what happens.
Well, thank you.
And
I want
yeah,
everybody to keep doing it.
I think we need to. Are there any, I guess, people who you hope will enter politics, or the type of people who you've met who you're like, I really hope we can get more people like this into positions. And I think there has been kind of a lack of role models and people who everyone really trusts, and they're like, okay, this is someone I know isn't co-opted, who's not taking the wrong money. And even I have a hard time finding those people, whether it's in business or politics, people who I trust. And I think a lot of that has been designed by design, put people in who are co-opted because we want to control them, which is why
Sure.
everything sucks. So where do we start?
Maybe Marty Bent. Maybe Marty Bent. Yeah,
Okay.
I think Marty would do great in politics. Thomas, pub key owner, I think he'd do well. I don't know that they want to do politics, but I think
That's the problem. They never do.
yeah. But I think they would do well, and I think that there are probably some rising stars in Kennedy's circles too. People who worked really hard on his campaign, who would do well. It's like you have to be able to thrive under pressure, and like everybody screams about being principled. Like, yes, but you also have to have the discretion to know when to make a deal so that you can advance forward at all. Because like I want to see people advance liberty. I don't want to see ideologues help us, fall back into like 2020 era behavior.
Yep. You can't always let the perfect be the enemy of the
Yep.
good, and I think that also means that it's a pretty wide open field. If you are one of those people, you have an opportunity to go take the torch and go inspire people, be better, and hopefully we can just get more people who aren't known yet, who are just everyday people. That's I would take a random sample of 100 Americans over the people they put up for Congress any day. The average person I run into is just they're good people, and so we need more of those. But I think it's still a big undertaking. I always wanted to run for Congress, but I'm in the 28th district. I think it's 28th with Adam Schiff, and I was like, oh, that man would destroy me. He would ruin my life. There would be nothing left of me, and my family would be in danger. And so I think hopefully we have a turning point where we can really give those people an opportunity to make some inroads in some of these places where you have these incumbents who everyone is just pretty sick of, but somehow they keep winning over and over again.
Yep.
And I think the Libertarian Party can be a big part of helping to surface those people and then help them get the support of the coalitions that they'll need in districts like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. I guess let's see. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. I had so many questions, but I knew I was gonna start to forget them as soon as we got talking here. I guess one thing just to kind of like inspire people, like on the days that are the darkest, on the times that are the hardest, like what gets you out of bed? What inspires you to keep going even when it seems like the battle is lost and there is no hope?
I just don't ever think the battle's lost. I'm just completely 100% focused on gaining any ground that I can. I'm like a hardcore optimist, and it's the only way I'm able to move forward in life. Like I would just never quit. And I don't know, like I just feel like that's what God wants for me and for most of humanity. And so I just, like you've got to find something worth fighting for and something to be excited about, and a win that you can achieve. And if you just focus on wins and potential wins that are within your reach, you can accomplish anything.
I love that. That's perfect. And that's honestly how I am too. You have to be optimistic. Why be pessimistic?
Yeah.
There's no reason. It's not a good life to live. You have to have hope that things can be better. The most of the systems are in place to seep that out of us, so it can become difficult. But I guess so. What is next for you? What do you hope that you'll be able to do going forward? You've already
Well,
done
I'm
so
trying to
much,
get
but if there's yeah, sorry.
pardons for Keone Rodriguez and Bill Hill, and Ian Freeman and Roman Sterlingov and Roman Storm. Like that's what I want right now. I'm 100% laser focused on seeing these guys walk free, not go to prison or get out of prison, because Ian and Roman Sterlingov are in prison right now.
Yep. No, and I think that is one of the best things that you can be doing. I think these guys, yeah, and even one person, I don't know if he's on your radar, but the Tiger King. I've talked to him a little bit. He's a
Yeah,
super good guy, and he's had a lot of trouble getting any kind of media attention, and and if you look into his story, it's pretty interesting. There was a lot of politicization.
I talk to Joe regularly, and
Really?
yeah,
Yeah.
and I will definitely be advocating for him to get a pardon. Yeah, he's
Okay,
he's
awesome.
innocent. He did not do any of the things he was accused of doing. I think he might have taken a couple of animals across state lines. He did not hurt anyone.
Yeah, compared to
It's
compared to most
crazy.
people, like it was a very targeted hit, um and he just seems like overall a good guy, and he's very libertarian leaning
He
too.
did a
He's a
he
guy's
did a
like, just leave me
ton
alone.
he did a ton for animals too. He placed so many, like, none of that's covered in his documentary. He placed so many animals in zoos. Like, you could the reason that we have the tiger population that we have as opposed to like almost nothing is because of Joe Exotic. He bred tigers and placed them all over the world. Like, they would be almost extinct if it hadn't been for his work. So, don't believe
Yeah.
everything you see on Netflix.
Yep. Yep, there you go. And no, and that's right. And there's something about, a guy who was just like, this is America. I wanna own a zoo someday. And it's
Yep.
like, man, that's a dream, and he made it happen. He was
So
able to
cool.
pull all the pieces together. And there's something about sticking that guy in a cage that does
It's
just,
wrong. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so I'm glad you've got his back. So I was like, I
But
don't know
yeah,
what I can do for you, Joe, but if I can advocate anywhere, I'll do my best. So
absolutely.
I'm glad he's got you. I've got a lot of faith in you getting something done there. And he's been getting into crypto too. He's been a really great proponent of it, and has been very willing to meet people and just kind of educate people and be educated too, which I love. Awesome. Well, uh, I think those are all of my questions, but this has been a real pleasure. I've been hoping we get a chance to do this for a long time, so I'm thrilled to have had the opportunity. But I guess as parting words for the audience, is there anywhere you think they should go to learn more about what you're doing, or any initiatives that you have, or learn more about the LP or anything like that?
Yeah, you can find out more about all of the Bitcoin political prisoners I'm advocating for at cryptoprisoners.com. Please sign Bill and Keone's petition at billandkeone.com. Please sign Ian Freeman's petition at freeiannow.org. And if you want to become part of the Bitcoin voting bloc, if you're fired up about this, you have just a couple of days of the year to help us. Go to lpmisescaucus.com. Find out how to become a delegate in your state. Go to national convention with us, and help us change the course of history.
Love that. That sounds perfect. Well, thank you all for listening. This has been an episode I wanted to do for a while, so um, very excited to have had you. And I'll make sure to post all those links and everything in the episode description. And maybe in a few years we can do this again and see how many more people you got out, and how much ground we've covered. But I think the future is bright, but we might have to build it. But the right people are around us. We just got to go find them and get organized, and just takes a few of the right people. So I'm glad we have you as one of those people fighting for the cause. And yeah, that's all I've got. So thank you guys so much. Appreciate your time, Angela. And we
Thank
will be
you.
back soon with another episode of the Cryptoconomy podcast. I believe next week. Thank you guys.